Trump Trump believes in using American currency to peg the supply of gasoline throughout the world. America, Trump is a hardliner when it comes to keeping the world pegged to the petrodollar, using his tariff wars to extort our allies for our federal deficit, to pay off our federal deficit of $35 trillion, because we don't know how to tax our way out of consuming the world with pennies on the dollar. When we import the world's commodities into our country and we force other nations to have a reserve of our currencies to float the gasoline supplies of the world, and using that as leverage for tariff and sanctions. If you don't believe me, listen to the words that came out of his mouth when he was at New York Economic Club speaking on an event that they held in his honor.
Well, it's a great question. The problem with what we have with sanctions, and I was a user of sanctions, but I put them on and take them off as quickly as possible, because ultimately it kills your dollar and it kills everything the dollar represents, and we have to continue to have that be the world currency. I think it's important. I think it would be losing a war if we lost the dollar as the world currency. I think that would be the equivalent of losing a war. That would make us a third world country, and we can't let it happen. So I use sanctions very powerfully against countries that deserve it, and then I take them off. Because look, you're losing Iran, you're losing Russia. China is out there trying to get their currency to be the dominant currency, as you know better than anybody. All of these things are happening. You're losing so many countries because there's so much conflict with all of these countries that you're going to lose that, and we can't lose that. So I want to use sanctions as little as possible. One of the things that we have with tariffs is that I'll say to them, you don't honor the dollar as your world currency. Is that right? You're not going to do it? No, we're not. I said, that's okay. I'm going to put tariffs all over your product. And they're going to say, sir, we'd love to honor the dollar as the world currency. You know, tariffs, in addition to monetary and the money that we'll take in, which will be bigger than you've ever seen in this country before, gives you tremendous political power. For something like that, as an example, I stopped wars with the threat of tariffs. I stopped wars with two countries that.
So at the end of this event, he's bragging about how much he wants to keep the world as a colony, economical colony that depends on the world currency, the petrodollar. You got to understand that this country uses the flow of gasoline dependency of the world to sanction, to devalue their currencies, to go to war with nations. He said it. He said China, Iran, and other nations, just to prop up America's hegemony with our currency, to keep the whole world imprisoned as America's economical colony. You know what it is when one nation wants the whole world to be economically enslaved to their currency, to use tariffs and sanctions as a form to extort the world, like Trump is doing, to somehow make America great again by extorting the world for tribute. First of all, we leech off the world for pennies on a dollar to consume the world's commodity goods as it's imported to inside of America. And then we get in so much debt with military deployments and getting into conflicts with other nations that our budgets, federal deficit goes up. We have $35 trillion of debt nationally in America. And Trump wants to extort our allies to pay for our debt obligations, to pay down the $35 trillion debt. And we were the ones that were leeching off the world as a consuming nation, while the rest of the third world sweated and labored for pennies on a dollar. And this tyrannical fascist leader, demagogue, wants to keep the world enslaved. You know what it is when one nation can devalue every other nation's currency? And give them runaway inflations, give them depressions, in the hopes that we will get our way by toppling other nations? And when I say we, not me, but the government of the United States uses currency as a weapon. Look at what's going on in Argentina, because the Federal Reserve wants to dollarize Argentina like they did Salvador, Ecuador, Panama. They want to dollarize. The oligarchs of the Federal Reserve wants to make South America their private properties to their banks. And then we have a tyrannical leader like Trump that wants to extort and divide and conquer Europe economically. Just for we can get rich by extorting it. Just for we can make America great and financially great again by extorting it from our allies. To pay for our $35 trillion of debt, of greed, from us consuming but not producing. America became for decades, the only real thing that America did was white-collar financial speculations on Wall Street. While we made Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, Vietnam to produce commodity goods for pennies on a dollar, for we can consume it and be complacent for decades. And we had a deficit, a trading deficit because of it. And now we have $35 trillion of debt that Trump wants to extort our allies to pay off our federal deficit. Talk about gluttony and greed. And not to mention that this world currency is making South America have runaway inflations. Look at what's going on in Venezuela, Argentina. We already dollarized Panama, Ecuador. But the Federal Reserve, private bankers, wants to make the whole of South America their portfolios under the currency of the Federal Reserve. They want to buy out South America like it's private property. And this president that we call J. Donald Trump wants to keep the whole world enslaved. So America has impunity to devalue every other nation's currencies. Give them hyperinflations. Give them depressions. Give them genocide starvations. If they're not willing to do our foreign affairs and what America wants them to do as third world regions. So, what is this gluttony of demagoguery that America can't get enough of greed, plummeting the world to consume it with our pure greed of gluttony? At this point, it is not even trickle-down economics. It's economical enslavement of the rest of the world. You know what it is to consume but not produce and export? For decades, America became a white-collar Wall Street speculation economy. When we bombarded Japan, split the Koreas, split off Taiwan during World War II, just to colonize them, to do our bidding, for we can consume and be complacent and lazy as a society in America. And then we did it to China because we needed more. And they're a heavily populated country, so we made them into our sweatshops. And for decades, we consumed for pennies on a dollar. We genocidally warmongered the Middle East for the love of gasoline just to prop up our currency. Hundreds of thousands of Arab citizens were genocidally warmongered in war oil invasions of the Pentagon. Africa, we done bled it dry for their natural resources. Now, the Federal Reserve wants to buy South America as their private property. Cuba has been starved to death. All of the United Nations members voted to lift the embargo of genocidally starving Cuba by America, embargoing Cuba. All of the members of the United Nations states throughout the world voted to lift the embargo. The only one nation that voted against and vetoed it was America. America manipulates South America's currencies to give them inferior purchasing powers when it comes to parroting currencies, purchasing powers. And we give them runaway inflations like Argentina and Venezuela, just in the hopes that they will get so desperate that they will buy in to the Federal Reserve. And they become private properties with the fiats of the Federal Reserves to be dollarized. So South America is becoming a plantation of slaves, indentured servants to the oligarch bankers and this private organization that America calls the Federal Reserve, with manifest destiny, or as the conservatives like to refer to South America, banana republics, are plantations. They look down at South America like Trump with indecency, like somehow South America is shithole places. And so America is a tyrannical capitalist society that's run amok globally for the love of greed, for the love of consumption, for the love of gluttony. The root of all evil is the love of money. The love of despotism, of greed, with a never-ending hunger to consume. So is it fair for this world currency to enslave humanity on this planet? Is it fair for the rest of humanity? And Trump wants to be a totalitarian leader on the world stage, to rule with impunity when it comes to commerce globally, with his sanctions and his tariff wars, extorting our allies into our allies' economies collapse when it comes to the European Union, dividing them and conquering them economically for the love of greed. You know what he said at his rallies? I'm going to keep on taking. He was referring to tariffing Europe. I'm going to keep on taking, and I'm going to take so much that I'm going to make America great again. And my supporters are going to get tired of me taking, but I'm going to keep on taking and taking until I make America great again. America will be so rich. So he's bleeding and leeching off the European Union for tribute to his grandeur of vanity, trolling their coffers and bleeding them dry. Germany economy is collapsing. Pretty soon, he will be tariffing France and Germany, extorting Spain and Italy if they don't fall in line with his fascism. Is this the world so superpower that is indispensable globally? No, this is the nightmare that the world has woken up to under this Trump madness we call mega, and is unjust, is pure abomination of greed, a pure gluttony of the root of all sin is the love of money, to consume with never-ending greed, to become full of trumpery with no shred of dignity.